Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below and the bell for more. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Today we will be talking about biblical names starting with H, Part 1. Haahashtari. Haahashtari, or Ahashtari, was one of the sons of Naarah, one of the two wives of Ashhur, in 1 Chronicles chapter 4. Because the name is used to refer to a family of Judahites who descend from Judah via Ashhur. Thomas Kelly Cheyne believed that the name Ha-Ashhari arose from a confusion between Ha-Ashhuri, the Ashhurite, with the obscure term ahashtranim, which appears in Esther chapter 8. Habaiah. Habaiah was the name given to a priestly family mentioned in Ezra chapter 2, meaning sons or descendants of Habaiah. Along with the families Hakkoz and Barzillai, the Habaiah family were priests whose names were not registered in the official genealogical records. Ezra ruled that their rights to serve as priests would be restricted until such time as a high priest could decide, using the oracular Urim and Thummim, whether they had divine approval to serve as priests. The name Habaiah means Yahweh hides or Yahweh protects, and appears in manuscripts of the Greek Septuagint in 7 different forms. Habakkuk. Habakkuk, who was active around 612 BC, was a prophet whose oracles and prayer are recorded in the book of Habakkuk, the 8th of the collected 12 minor prophets in the Hebrew Bible. He is revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Almost all information about Habakkuk is drawn from the book of the Bible bearing his name, with no biographical details provided other than his title, the prophet. Outside the Bible, he is mentioned over the centuries in the forms of Christian and rabbinic tradition. Almost nothing is known about Habakkuk, aside from what is stated within the book of the Bible bearing his name, or those deductions that may be drawn from that book. His name appears in the Bible only in Habakkuk 1 and 3, with no biographical details provided other than his title, the prophet. Even the origin of his name is uncertain. For Habakkuk, there is no reliable account. Although his home is not identified, scholars conclude that Habakkuk lived in Jerusalem at the time he wrote his prophecy. Further analysis has provided an approximate date for his prophecy and possibilities concerning his activities and background. Beyond the Bible, considerable conjecture has been put forward over the centuries in the form of Christian and rabbinic tradition, but such accounts are dismissed by modern scholars as speculative and apocryphal. Because the book of Habakkuk consists of 5 oracles about the Babylonians, and the Chaldean rise to power is dated circa 612 BC. It is assumed he was active about that time, making him an early contemporary of Jeremiah and Zephaniah. Jewish sources do not group him with those 2 prophets, who are often placed together. It is possible that he was earlier than these prophets, because the final chapter of his book is a song. It is sometimes assumed that he was a member of the tribe of Levi, who served as musicians in Solomon's temple. This name does not occur elsewhere. The Septuagint transcribes his name into Greek, or Ambakum, and the Vulgate transcribes it into Habakkuk. The etymology of the name is not clear, and its form has no parallel in Hebrew. Habakkuk appears in Bel and the dragon, which is part of the additions to Daniel. Habakkuk is in Judea after making some stew. He is instructed by an angel of the Lord to take the stew to Daniel, who is in the lion's den in Babylon. After declaring that he is unaware of both the den and Babylon, the angel transports Habakkuk to the lion's den. Habakkuk gives Daniel the food to sustain him, and he is immediately taken back to his place. Habakkuk is also mentioned in the lives of the prophets, which also mentions his time in Babylon. According to the Zohar, Habakkuk is the boy born to the Shunammite woman through Elisha's blessing. And he said about this season, according to the time of life, "Thou shalt embrace a son." And she said, "Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaiden," in Kings 4. The only work attributed to Habakkuk is the short book of the Bible that bears his name. The book of Habakkuk consists of 5 oracles about the Babylonians and a song of praise to God. The style of the book has been praised by many scholars, signifying that its author was a man of great literary talent. The entire book follows the structure of chiasmus, in which parallelism of thought is used to bracket sections of the text. Habakkuk is unusual among the prophets in that he openly questions the work of God. In the first part of the first chapter, the prophet sees the prejudice among his people and asks, why does God not take action? "O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not hear? Or cry to you violence and you will not save?" The final resting place of Habakkuk has been claimed at multiple locations. The 5th century Christian historian Sozomen claimed that the relics of Habakkuk were found at Selah, which when God revealed their location to Zebinus, bishop of Eleutheropolis, in a dream. Currently, 1 location in Israel and 1 in Iran lay claim to being the burial site of the prophet. The burial place of Habakkuk is identified by Jewish tradition as a hillside in the Upper Galilee region of northern Israel, close to the villages of Katarim and Hakkoz, about 6 miles southwest of Safed and 12 miles north of Mount Tabor. A small stone building erected during the 20th century protects the tomb. Tradition dating as early as the 12th century AD holds that Habakkuk's tomb is at this location, but the tomb may also be of a local sheik of Yakuk, a name related to the biblical place named Hakkoz, whose pronunciation and spelling in Hebrew are close to Habakkuk. Archaeological findings in this location include several burial places dated to the Second Temple period. A mausoleum southeast of the city of Tizirkin in the west of Iran is also believed to be Habakkuk's burial place. It is protected by Iran's Cultural Heritage, Handcrafts, and Tourism Organization. The organization's guide to the Hamadan province states that Habakkuk was believed to be a guardian to Solomon's temple, and that he was captured by the Babylonians and remained in their prison for some years. After being freed by Cyrus the Great, he went to Ecbatana and remained there until he died, and was buried somewhere nearby in what is today Tizirkin. The surrounding shrine may date to the period of Seljuk Empire, 11th to 12th century. It consists of an octagonal wall and conical dome. Underneath the shrine is a hidden basement with 3 floors. In the center of the shrine's courtyard is the grave where Habakkuk is said to be buried. A stone upon the grave is inscribed in both Hebrew and Persian, stating that the prophet's father was Shiu Lovit and his mother was Lisho Nemet. Both Muslims and Jews visit it to pay their respects. On the Eastern Orthodox liturgical calendar, his feast day is December the 2nd. In the Roman Catholic Church, the 12 minor prophets are read in the Roman breviary during the 4th and 5th weeks of November, which are the last 2 weeks of the liturgical year, and his feast day is January the 15th. This day is also celebrated as his feast by the Greek Orthodox Church. This day is also celebrated as his feast by the Greek Orthodox Church. In 2011, he was commemorated with the other minor prophets in the calendar of saints of the Armenian Apostle Church on February the 8th. Habakkuk has also been commemorated in sculpture. In 1435, the Florentine artist Donatello created a sculpture of the prophet for the bell tower of Florence. This statue, nicknamed Big Head because of the shape of the head, now resides in the Museo dell'Opera del Duomo. The Basilica of Santa Maria del Popolo in Rome contains a Baroque sculpture of Habakkuk by the 17th century artist Bernini. Between 1800 and 1805, the Brazilian sculptor Aleijadinho completed a soapstone sculpture of Habakkuk as part of his 12 prophets. The figures are arranged around the forecourt and monumental stairway in front of the Santuario do Bom Jesus do Matocinos at Conganas. Although not mentioned by name in the Quran, Habakkuk is recognized as an Islamic prophet because he is believed to herald the coming of last prophet and divine scripture Muhammad and the Quran in the book of Habakkuk. In the court of Al-Mamun, Imam Ali al-Rida, a descendant of Muhammad and chief Islamic scholar in the time of the Abbasid caliphs, was asked by the exilarch to prove that Muhammad was a prophet through the Torah. Imam Rida asked, "Do you know the prophet Habakkuk?" He said, "Yes, I know of him." Al-Rida said, "And this is narrated in your book." Allah brought down speech on Mount Paran, and the heavens were filled with the glorification of Muhammad and his community. His horse carries him over water as it carries him over land. He will bring a new book to us after the ruin of the holy house, the temple in Jerusalem. What is meant by this book is the Quran. Do you know this and believe in it? The exilarch said, Habakkuk the prophet has said this, and we do not deny what he said. Although the Quran only mentions around 25 prophets by name and alludes to a few others, it has been a cardinal doctrine of Islam that many more prophets were sent by God who are not mentioned in the scripture. Thus Muslims have traditionally had no problem accepting those other Hebrew prophets not mentioned in the Quran, or hadith as legitimate prophets of God, especially as the Quran itself states, surely we sent down the Torah to Moses, wherein is guidance and light. Thereby the prophets who followed him, who had surrendered themselves, gave judgment for those who were Jewish, as did the masters and the rabbis, following such portion of God's book as they were given to keep and were witnesses to, with this passage having often been interpreted by Muslims to include within the phrase prophets an allusion to all prophetic figures of the Jewish scriptural portion of the Nevi'im. That is to say, all the prophets of Israel after Moses and Aaron. Thus, Islamic authors have often alluded to Habakkuk as a prophet in their works, and followed the pronunciation of his name with the traditional salutations of peace bestowed by Muslims onto prophets after the utterance of their names. Some medical or medieval Muslim scholars even provide observations on the biblical book of Habakkuk, with the primary purpose of showing that the prophet had predicted the coming of Muhammad. In Habakkuk chapter 3, in a manner akin to the early Christian tradition of seeing in the book's prophecies allusions to the advent of Christ, Habakkuk chapter 3 received observations from medieval Islamic thinkers, the famous and revered Persian Islamic scholar and polymath Ibn Qutbah, who served as a judge during the Abbasid Caliphate, and of the prophet Habakkuk. Among the words of Habakkuk, who prophesied in the days of Daniel, Habakkuk says, God came from the Taman, and the Holy One from the mountains of Paran, and the earth was filled with the beautification of the praiseworthy one, Ahmad, which is a name of Muhammad in Islam. And with his right hand he exercised power over the earth and the necks of the nations, which has been interpreted by scholars to be a clear allusion to Habakkuk chapter 3. Elsewhere, the same scholar glossed Habakkuk chapter 3 as follows: the earth shines with his light, and his horses launched into the sea. Again, interpreting the prophecy to be an allusion to the coming of Muhammad. One further prophecy of Habakkuk which Ibn Qutbah cited from Hebraic literature was, you shall be exceedingly filled in your bowels, O praised one Muhammad. This final prophecy, attributed to Habakkuk, was also referred to by later scholars like Ibn al-Jawzi and Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya. Habaiah was either the head of a family of Rechabites in Jeremiah chapter 35, or else a place name for the location that a Rechabite lived. According to Shen and Black, it may have been a scribal error where the name Kabzeel, a place in the territory of Judah, was originally intended. Hakkoz Hakaliah was the father of Nehemiah, the author of the book of Nehemiah, which is a book of the Hebrew Bible, known to Jews as the Tanakh and to Christians as the Old Testament. Hakaliah's name is mentioned at the beginning of the book and in Nehemiah chapter 10. The references to Hakaliah distinguish Nehemiah from others with the same name. Little is known about his status. Bowman notes that many attempts have been made to explain the name Hakaliah, but none is persuasive. Hakmoni. Hakmoni is mentioned in passing in 1 Chronicles chapter 27, which records that his son Yakil, a scribe, tutored David's sons. Hadad. Hadad was the storm and rain god in the Canaanite and ancient Mesopotamian religions. He was attested in Ebla as Hadda in 2500 BCE. From the Levant, Hadad was introduced to Mesopotamia by the Amorites, where he became known as the Akkadian god Adad. Adad and Isker are usually written with the ideogram dim or dim, the same symbol used for the Hurrian god Tishub. The bull was the symbolic animal of Hadad. He appeared bearded, often holding a club and thunderbolt while wearing a bull-horned headdress. Hadad was equated with the Greek god Zeus, the Roman god Jupiter, and the cult center near Delish in Asia Minor. He was addressed as Jupiter Dolicanus, as well as the Hittite storm god Tishub. The Baal cycle, also known as the Epic of Baal, is a collection of stories about the god Baal from the Canaanite area, who is also referred to as Hadad, the storm god. This collection of stories is dated between 1400 and 1200 BC. It was found in Ugarit, an ancient city located in modern-day Syria. In Akkadian, Hadad is also known as Ramanu, or Thunderer, which was a byname of Hadad. Ramanu was formerly incorrectly taken by many scholars to be an independent Akkadian god, later identified with Hadad. Though originating in northern Mesopotamia, Hadad was identified by the same sumerogram, dim, that designated Isker in the south. His worship became widespread in Mesopotamia after the first Babylonian dynasty. A text dating from the reign of Ur-Ninurta characterizes Hadad as both threatening in his stormy rage and generally life-giving and benevolent. The form Isker appears in the list of gods found in Shuruppak, but was of far less importance, probably partly because storms and rain were scarce in summer, and agriculture there depended on irrigation instead. The gods Enlil and Ninurta also had storm god features that decreased Isker's distinctiveness. He occasionally appears as the assistant or companion of one or the other of the two. When Enki distributed the destinies, he made Isker inspector of the cosmos. In one litany, Isker is proclaimed again and again as Great Radiant Bull, your name is Heaven, and also called Son of Anu, Lord of Karkara, twin brother of Enki, Lord of Abundance, Lord who rides the storm, and Lion of the Heaven. In other texts, Hadad is sometimes son of the moon god Nana, or Sin by Ningal, and brother of Utu, or Shamash, and Inanna, or Ishtar. Ishkar is also sometimes described as the son of Enlil. The bull was portrayed as Adad's sacred animal starting in the Old Babylonian period. This was the biblical names starting with H, Part 1. Please stay tuned for Part 2 with the rest of Hadad's background. If you like these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below and the bell for more. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. God's blessings be upon us all.